All right, what is up? Race Brain Hyrox Rundown. We're back, and this time it's a very special edition. You know why? We kicked out the rest of the Race Brain members, and we said, you know what? When it comes to talking teams, what better than have the Wisconsin boys, the Scotty boys, who are a team, to talk to you today. So today on this show, we've got Demo, wearer of the rec specs, although he'll be clear to tell you they're not rec specs. Marcus Wallace. Marcus, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Went to the Hyrox after party last night. Slept in a little bit.
There we go.
The real world.
There we go. And then we've got the most beloved member of Race Brain, Bracken Crocker, all the way from West Dallas. Yeah, I appreciate the amount of people that came up to me and introduced themselves this week. I really did. And I don't know how I should feel about this, but 99% of people took their time to introduce themselves to me and then tell me how much they loved Bracken. So I don't know if that was like a backhanded compliment at me that like I need to do my job better. Feedback is received and heard, but BK, you are loved by the community, even though Michelle doesn't believe that you exist.
I think there's old community and new community. And old community, we go way back. The new community, not totally sold on me as a Hyrox person.
You got takes.
But it was good to see the community, good to feel the love. It's good to be back out there. And those are indeed rec specs. Horace Grant would be proud.
I wore rec specs in middle school playing basketball. These are not rec specs. That is a specific brand. These are, I'm not saying the brand because they don't sponsor me yet, but they know.
All right. Well, all jokes aside, really did appreciate everybody coming up and saying what's up this weekend. We felt the love, all of us to a T. It was honestly just kind of amazing how many people told us that they listen to us from all across the world. We do appreciate your support. And when you see us at future races, come say what's up. We love talking Hyrox. We love talking to the community. It was great getting to meet so many of you. And also was a little bit surprised at how many of the athletes actually listened to our show. And by athletes, I mean Elite 15 athletes. That was pretty cool. So we felt the love. We appreciate it. Today, we are going to talk relay and Elite 15 doubles. And then later this week, I will be joined by Michelle Navarro and Jack Bauer to just talk about thoughts on the weekend. We got a lot of content to cover from this weekend. There's no way we could do it in one episode. It would probably take 3 to 4 hours. So we're going to split it up. So we, gentlemen, are going to start in order. So we will start with the relay. We talked about this before we came on. If you were looking for a breakdown of the relay, we are probably not going to do that. And by probably, we are definitely not going to do that. You can go back and watch the race. We're just going to give some high-level thoughts, and then we will move on to the Elite 15 doubles. So your top 5 pre-controversy was the United States. I don't remember exactly what the time was because they've been removed, but they had a 49, I think it was like 49 mid, might have been like 49.30. That was Hunter McIntyre, Dylan Scott, Lauren Weeks, Vivian Tafuto. Second place, James Newberry, James Kelly, Jess Petro, Joanna Wettrick, Team Australia, 50-11. Third place was a tie with Team England of Zara Piergiani, Sinead Bent, Charlie Bottrell, Jake Williamson, and then Team Belgium, the Van den Lindenloof sisters, Tom Fransons, Peter Mays, with the 50-15. And then your 5th place team was the Germans, Viola Oberlander, Tim Beinisch, Linda Meyer, Yannick Chopla. We did have controversy. Team USA was disqualified. We will start there. And so the actual 5th place team wound up being Team Canada, Maria Fetchik, Katie Simonson, Austin Azar, and Cole Learn. I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room. It's really not the elephant in the room. Everybody's talking about it. If you did not watch the race or you go back and watch, there was an incident that occurred on run 1 between Jeremy McConnell of Ireland and Hunter McIntyre of the U.S. Jeremy was, in fairness to Hunter, Jeremy had done this several times. He was stepping in front of Hunter's line. He said he was trying to get the inside lane, but it looked like it was pretty apparent if he was looking over his shoulder to see where Hunter was, and then he was jumping in, throwing elbows. Then Hunter finally had enough, body checked him, which caused Jeremy to lose his balance, hit the railing. He did not fall over and was able to keep on running. there is more to the story, but if the athletes aren't going to share that, it's not my place to share it either. But what I will say is this, to kind of lead off here, the disqualification, there's a lot, I saw a lot of opinions online. Disqualifying Team USA, it was full stop, was the right decision. If you go into the rule book, you might not like the decision, and that's fine. If you go into the rule books, it talks about unsportsmanlike conduct, and one of the things outlined is aggressive behavior or shoving. Jeremy McConnell could have gotten seriously hurt. I know Hunter said that it looked way worse on camera than what it actually was, but Jeremy hit the railing with a decent amount of velocity, and it could have ended way different than it did. So I think it was the right choice. I think, however, one thing that is interesting to me, and this does not negate anything that I just said, he should have been DQ'd, full stop. Having seen the race and having watched the race back, there were multiple other incidences between multiple other countries, I will not name names, that are in this top 5 now, where there was pushing and shoving that did not get caught on camera. People got tripped up, stepped on, pushed, and just because it wasn't caught, they were not penalized. So I don't necessarily have an opinion about that, but if we're going to go back and retroactively apply these, then we need to watch, in my opinion, the whole race. Thoughts?
Well, there's facts and there's opinions here. Opinions are winning online right now. The facts are that there was a rule book violation, and the rule book spells out what has to happen. So it was the correct call by the rule book. Another fact is that it was only revisited because there was an appeal lodged. Interestingly, I believe the appeal was not by either team. So that's also interesting. The opinions are that both parties have a track record of this. Jeremy has a track record of impeding other teams. We saw it in Houston. We saw it here. Hunter has a track record of taking it upon himself to be the bar's bouncer. And we've seen it at Spartan Games. We've seen it in Spartan Race. We've seen it in Hyrox before. And the fact of the matter is that everything Hunter does is amplified, including his actions. So he is an enormous human being. His brief little check there on someone who's moving at pace in super shoes, which are unstable, had a lot of potential for bad things to occur. And luckily, Jeremy's also a large human being and a good athlete and stayed upright. But opinion is it needed to happen at some point. I think both are going to be a little bit more in check moving forward. Fact is, the right call was made. And the other fact is that there are too many big, fast athletes on course at one time. These things are going to keep happening to some extent.
Yeah, to Bracken's point, and Marcus Wallace was in this race, so I'll be interested to hear his take on it. But to Bracken's point, you can go back and watch this. It was not probably talked about because we were doing iPhone videos and it wasn't covered by Hyrox. But in the Houston race, JK and Jake Dearden were coming in to the sled push about the exact same time as Dylan Scott and Jeremy McConnell. And Jeremy shoved JK out of the way to take a sled. He literally bodied him. JK did not lose his balance, but JK kind of made a look at him and, took the sled and whatever. And then I believe that there was some shoving by Jeremy in the burpees as well.
Was Debo involved in some of this too?
I think Debo might have been involved in some of that. Debo, would you care to comment?
I think Jeremy is a great racer. I was not involved in any of this. I got mixed up with Dylan Scott a little bit in that race, but not Jeremy.
Okay. Point is, there's a track record here, and at some point, someone had to check them on it. They did, and I think that a little bit of frontier justice in this type of sport where there's not officials at every corner is probably the only real way to end it. I think it's probably going to be more in check moving forward, but Hunter does everything amplified. It was too hard, obviously, and that's why they're DQ'd.
And it's interesting, though, that Mo, one of the co-founders, acknowledged that Jeremy was instigating and that Jeremy was operating. He even used language like it was unsafe. So it's okay, that was my thing. Was the only thing that I think should have been applied is I think both should have been DQ'd. I think Jeremy should have been DQ'd because he was intentionally, you could see it on the video, he's intentionally trying to cut Hunter off. He said afterwards that he wasn't, but if you watch, he's looking for Hunter and then he's diving into his line and he was throwing arms. He did not make contact with Hunter, but he was trying to get the, for my England fans or my English fans out there that watch football, Jeremy is the definition of a shithouser. He got what he was trying to get, which was a reaction out of Hunter. He should have been DQ'd as well, is my opinion. So Hunter got what he deserved. It's unfortunate that Lauren, Dylan, and Vivian are punished by this, but I think that it should have been applied to both.
I think impeding a runner is always such a tricky ruling, and it's not like we have officials all along the track. So it ends up being just what's caught on camera. I mean, the race I was in this weekend, I got impeded multiple times. You're running with sharp 90-degree turns, not like we're on a curved track. So that's always going to happen. It is the degree of it. And I think if it's intentional or not, but obviously we will not know that.
I don't think I would have DQ'd him. But again, we're in opinion now. Again, what I believe really was the issue here is no one filed a protest against him. It was against Hunter in order for them to take his podium spot. Again, weird that it came not from an official, weird that it had to come from another team who is not involved. So that's a strange part to me. But again, now we're in opinion area. The facts are Hyrox community needs to calm down. There is a rule book for this very thing. And in any other running based sport, impeding another runner is very gray area. Intentionally seeking contact is always a DQ. And so at least we can just rest easy that this triathlon, running, whatever running based locomotion thing, cycling you want to call, everyone impedes to an extent. Everyone gets DQ'd who seeks out and initiates contact that like throws a runner or a cyclist off course. So it's the right call. But my hope is that the ripples of this, the butterfly effect, kind of chills out everyone's testosterone racing moving forward.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, we don't need to cover that any further.
I do want to cover one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Dylan did what Dylan does, and he spoke his mind afterwards. And I want to reiterate to people online that I'm not taking a side on this, but I think people need to chill out on the you got to support your teammates type of thing. These aren't people who came up together. These people who were thrown together on a relay. And people are saying you're losing your mind over 3K. I think they're forgetting that not every athlete in this is a pro. $3,000 might fund the next season for a lot of these people. This might be their travel to the Elite 15. So
actually it cost them $4,000 per person, and with their sponsors, they get podium bonuses. Right. We don't know the details on that, but that likely cost each athlete probably at minimum, probably $5 or $6 grand. BK, you might know more about sponsorships than I do, but I would imagine that some of them and their big name sponsors is probably worth even more. And I'm sure it's based on placing, and first place is probably worth more than a second or a third. So yeah, I mean that, and I actually, I don't really care if you say $3 grand or $4 grand is not a lot, unless you're making $1 million a year or more. I mean, even then, like, what if I took $4,000 out of your pocketbook tomorrow just because?
Right.
You'd be pissed.
Yeah. And it's just a bad precedent. Blind allegiance is what leads to a lot of issues in sport as it is. There should be no blind allegiance in this world other than to, well, I guess nothing. No such thing as blind allegiance. Let's not promote that.
Yeah. Yeah. And fair is fair, wrong is wrong. Like I get it. Like Hunter has a cult following of people who will defend him to the death. And I understand that. And I respect that. I would encourage every single one of you that's doing, like, I love Hunter and I have a ton of respect for Hunter, but look at the rule book. It is plain as day that if you do that, you can get the penalty is like people were saying he should have been penalized, not disqualification. The rule book clearly states that aggressive contact can and will result in a disqualification, not a penalty. So it's like there's not really an argument here. Like it is spelled out in the rule book. This isn't what, this isn't an area where it's gray area. Like, to BK's point, he forcibly made contact. That is explicitly stated, and it is explicitly stated that that's a DQ. So, yeah. All right, on the race itself, just a high level thought. They messed up by moving it to Friday night. It was not the same spectacle that it was in Nice. In Nice, it was the pinnacle event. They made it at the very end, right before dinner and the after parties. Everybody came out because their races were done and over with. The stadium was empty, basically. Like the walkouts were kind of lame because there was really no one cheering. I just think that next year, if they do this, it was really cool that they did the adaptive invitational at the same on the Sunday Sunday evening. But from an order of events perspective, I think that it should be the last event. Thoughts?
I was in Chicago and I did not attend the relay. So yes, I agree. It's tough to get people out there, especially if they're racing the next day, which many
if they're
people
racing
were.
I think if people had been, Sunday's different because everyone's done. So there's no reason to not go.
Yeah. First of all, it's not Hyrox. I think we can all agree that Hyrox as a sport would be no worse if the relay didn't exist. It's the exact opposite of Hyrox. You don't have to be a master of all. You can just be jack of a few trades. It's not Hyrox at its core, and as such, it's a spectacle event, and the spectacle is the speed. And so, yeah, let it be last. Let it cap off. Start the celebration. Like it's the dividing line between the competition and the celebration. Just hand out drink tickets for it. Let people get rowdy, and let's just make it a pure spectacle. Invite some super fast individual non-qualified teams in. I think we should lean into it being a spectacle because it's not Hyrox, but it's awesome. So it should be done in a spot where people can watch it.
Yeah, to that point, these races always make superstars. Last year it was Jake Williamson. The way that he runs 1 and 5, and then did the ergs. This year the superstar is, and I'm absolutely going to say this person's name wrong, but on the French team, I believe her first name is Mavina. The way that she runs, she was running. I mean, with all due respect, typically when we've got men and women on the course, we're seeing the men just pull away from the women. But there are two visuals that stick out to me. She was running JK down on the track, and then she was running him down in the rock zone, which is like JK's specialty. And like, that was like fun to see. Like to Bracken's point, like that's someone that outside of maybe her local community or in, maybe within the European circle, most people don't know, but that's an image that sticks out to everybody, is her just absolutely chasing down one of the fastest men in Hyrox. It was cool to see. And I think JK even amplified it on Instagram and said, like, this is exactly why we do this. We want to see stuff like this.
Yeah. It's the 4x4. You got to cap off the meat with it.
Yeah. What other storylines stick out to you all from the relay?
Again, it's officiating. The faster the race, and this will be the same thing I'm going to say about doubles, the smaller the margins of victory, which means the more important it is for officials to stay out of the way or to get it right. We can't have people inserting themselves into the race for the sake of doing it or because they're a little bit unsure about the rules. And so in these races, which are divided by tenths and seconds, we can't have unnecessary cards being thrown up and conversations happening over your shoulder during burpee broad jumps and farmer's carry being directed the wrong way or being allowed to go the wrong way. It's just, we have to figure out our paperwork.
Yeah, the officials gave Viola poor instructions twice on the farmer's carries, and she went the wrong way both times.
Race brain's a real thing. You have to take away the ability for that to happen.
Yeah. Also on that, like, there's just still, for how great the sport is, there's still some things that have to be cleaned up. Team New Zealand getting into the sled push, and they had split the men's sleds and the women's sleds, and there wasn't a sled for Team New Zealand, and they had to wait 80 seconds for a sled to open up. And Hyrox did not go back, and as far as I'm aware and looking at it, they did not go back and retroactively give them the time, which, cost them placings. Like, there are things that Hyrox does so well, and then there's these little things that are like, duh, how does this happen? So, Debo, any thoughts on the relay?
Congratulations to Team Proven. I didn't think they had it in them.
Yeah, shout out to Team Proven, Team Australia. They pulled the win with an impressive 50-11. That is a good time, and they were in a very tight wall ball off with the English and the Belgians. It was an exciting finish. So that was cool to see. It was also one thing that strikes me about that was we got to see James Newbury against Hunter and Tim and it's just like, I don't really have a point on this other than to say it's just interesting to see the different styles. Tim and Hunter were like, their cadence was high. They were like putting their full bodies into it. And James, who comes from Row. James, who comes from a CrossFit background. I think Till even made the comment, looked like he was pulling like 19 strokes a minute. And that was one thing that I thought was, just interesting to see the different styles there of like, kind of on the women's side, we see Sinead when she rows, she puts her whole body into it. And that's kind of how Hunter and Tim rode. And like James just looked like he was chilling and was absolutely ripping that thing. So that was
I think I did look at the splits. He lost a good amount of time. For the more
Tim did overtake him
both on the run preceding and on the row. So
yeah,
maybe not the best choice for the team.
Devo doesn't care.
This is the thing, though. As much as I say that this isn't Hyrox, it's awesome because historically in relays in hybrid sports, if you take the top 4 finishers at World Championships and put them on a team, or the top 2, they're unbeatable. And that's not the case in Hyrox doubles or in this relay. And so I do think it needs to stay around. I said Hyrox wouldn't be worse for taking it away. I still believe that. But if they figure this out, it could be a benefit. And the fact that you were even talking about James Newbury and Hunter in the same breath means that this is really good for the sport. So we have to find a way to make it so that it's just our takeaways aren't execution things. Our takeaways aren't negatives, because the races have the potential to all come down to the wall balls.
Yeah. Are we interested in a men's relay?
Yes.
Or a women's relay?
I think that's better, to be honest.
Yeah, I will. That was one thing that was like kind of tough when watching it. And again, I mean this with all due respect, but when it was like the lead, you can't really know where people are at until you get into like the 7th or 8th station, because you'd have men and women going at different times. And so it's like, if a woman goes off on the sled pull, that run is going to be slightly slower than the men. And then the pull is always going to be slower, but then it could instantly be erased because the team that pulls out ahead could have a woman going on the next station. And you know what I mean? So it's just like, it was very hard to get an idea of who was where, just because of the varying abilities. And I also just think that it would be, and we've seen that some of the dudes, what's the world record right now in the relay? I think it's like in the 47s.
No idea.
Which would be, I think, interesting.
Well, this is back into opinion territory, but co-ed relays are never quite as good, in my opinion, as non-co-ed, because the order that you put people in limits everyone from hitting their max potential. Guys are either running alone or girls are getting to run away from, for the most part. They don't even get to go against their own peers the entire time. And I'd really like to see a group of 4 women thrash themselves all the way through. And like you said, be able to track the whole time without wondering, now, when will this come out to back to even? The same thing with the guys. The mixed relay time being slower than doubles times is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It should be the fastest event. Let's make it that.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Again, shout out to the podiums, Australia, England, and Belgium. And it's cool to see that the Belgians was really cool to me. I mean, Tom Fransons, Peter Mays, and the Van den Lindenloofs, they all raced Elite 15 doubles. But, if you look at the rest of the teams, the Germans those are all Elite 15 athletes: Viola, Tim, Linda, Yannick. Obviously the American team was all elites. The English team was close to being all elites, although Charlie Bottrell was in the doubles race. And then you kind of look throughout, like, there's some big names on these teams, and the Belgians, I mean, that's a good run. That's really a good run for them. So it was cool to see. All right. On to the Elite 15 doubles. We'll go in order how it happened. We'll start with the women, then we'll go to the men, and we'll get Devo's raw perspective. All right. In first place with a 54-58, Lauren Griffith and Lauren Weeks. In second place, the Brits, Lucy Proctor and Sinead Bent. In third, the Germans, Linda Meyer and Viola Oberlander. In fourth, Kate Davies, Zara Piergiani. And in fifth, the Vanden Lindenloof sisters, Margot and Charlotte. This was a good race. This is another one where, again, I don't want to. Anthony actually made a joke to me on Saturday and said, "I know what your next race brain topic is going to be." And I said, "Oh yeah, what's that?" And he said, "Post race penalties." And I said, "No, I've got a list of things to talk about that. Other than that, however, this is another one of the races where post race challenges did impact the result. Although again, the decision was rightly applied, so I'm not taking anything away. But the story here was Sinead Bent and Lucy Proctor absolutely ran away with this. They basically led wire to wire. It was very impressive. They got a 10-second penalty for, I don't remember exactly who started the row. I think it might have been Sinead. However, she started before Lucy got to the mat. And so they were assessed a 10-second penalty for that.
It was actually for grabbing the handle before both her feet were in.
Oh, is that what it was?
She didn't even engage.
We didn't.
She grabbed it. Her second foot wasn't in, and she paused, put it in, and pulled, but she'd already moved a chain link.
And they didn't even have mats for us, actually. They were very clear. You always had to add 1 foot on the mat in the briefing, and then we got out there and there were no mats.
It's hilarious. So they were assessed a 10-second penalty there, and then they were assessed it was either a 10 or 15-second penalty on the sandbag lunge. They were going to do a transfer, and then they dropped the bag. And again, I am, just for the sake of discussion, I'm going to bring this up. That is what's in the rule book. Very clearly states it. You cannot drop the bag. If you drop the bag, you will be assessed a penalty. I think you used to get a warning and then a penalty, but in doubles, the rule is if you drop the bag, you are assessed a penalty. So it was rightly applied. The problem that I have with it, going back to BK's point earlier, is the judge in the lane did not say anything. She actually started to reach and then decided against it. And then Matt Locke, the technical director, was right there. It happened right in front of him. And so again, I want to be crystal clear on this. I'm not taking away from the decision. It was the right decision. Both things can be true. It should have been applied in the moment by the judge standing right there. And then the technical director for the Elite 15 series is right there. He should have gone over and said something to the judge, and it should have been applied in the race itself. It should not have taken a post-race challenge. Again, it was the right call, but it's a bad look whenever your judges, and I think this is the point that Bracken has made that we're definitely going to talk about on the next show too. The judging this weekend was horrific. And the reason why I say that it was horrific was because it was not evenly applied. We had burpee broad jump judges making different calls and different assumptions. Some people were using their feet. Some people weren't using their feet. Like, it's not like there's a standard that is explicitly spelled out, but there is still too much subjectivity across 15 judges. I don't know what the solution is. And I've said that I try to propose solutions over just problems, but the judging was atrocious.
It was. And on the live stream for the doubles, we saw, I'm blanking which team, maybe Viola get a card for, they weren't sure. They thought it was maybe her chest didn't touch the ground. And then in slow-mo replay, you saw that 1 foot came up slightly staggered ahead of the other and just superseded her hand placement by like probably less than an inch. But coming in, Tim, just knocked over a light here. Tim on his I believe it was Tim on his very first entry into it, stepped up like 6 inches past his feet. And the judge was right down there and nothing happened. So this isn't calling out Tim. He came in hot. Those kind of things happen. We saw it with Rich last year. He was doing his shuffle walking in between lunges. He's not a cheater. Things just happen sometimes when you're going fast. But two teams in the same race had exact opposite judging calls happen. And we just can't have that. So again, I'm going to double down on what I said before. If we're going to rely on volunteers, which are always going to be poorly trained because there's no amount of training you can do in 30 minutes that's going to make someone well-trained, then we have to change the movement standards until they don't require judging interventions. Because this is pathetic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to get away from this for a second, but it's relevant. Yesterday in the venue, I watched the end of Chris Roglotsky's A-Troop doubles race. She was quite literally ass to grass. I told her I was going to say this on the show. She was quite literally ass to grass. She got 16 no reps out of the gate. And she finally switched with her partner because I think she'd had enough, like, what is happening? And the explanation that she got was that she wasn't getting to depth. I have judged Elite 15 races. I've been in the sport a long time. I'm telling you, Chris breaks 90. There's nothing wrong with her wall ball depth or form. Yusuf came over and basically said, I didn't see it, so I can't do anything about it. And then he like got down and was like watching her like do them. And it's just like, if you're going to be so strict, which you should be, it's World Championships, you've got to get it right. And we shouldn't be talking about judging. And in this case, again, Sinead and Lucy deserved the penalties. I'm not saying that they didn't. They absolutely deserve the penalties. The rub is that the head judges have to know the rule book, and it happened right in front of a judge, and the judge didn't call it.
It's like the most obvious one.
Yeah, I'm a Rams fan, and so I'm willing to say this. You go back to the year they won the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship against the Saints, there was absolutely a pass interference that happened on the goal line that did not get called. It happened right in front of an official. I was like, oh my God, that's it. They're just gonna walk in for a touchdown now. And they did not call it, and it changed the game. But they can't go back after the game is over and say, well, yeah, that was actually pass interference, so we're going to change the result. You can't do that.
Well, it's not palatable for the audience.
Yeah.
And if you have to file an appeal, you kind of burn a bridge in the sport. Slightly, at least for the next few months. People are not going to like you if you file an appeal against them, especially if you win. But the fact that you had to call them out to try to get ahead of them, it's a bad look. But the officiating makes it so that you kind of have no choice but to do that. They dropped a bag. That's the most obvious call you can make.
Yeah.
There's no like gray area. And I flinched bad when that happened because I hadn't read the updated rule book. It used to be a redo of the entire station in singles. I hadn't read the updated doubles book, but I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to take last. And luckily that didn't have to happen, but it's so obvious and they got it wrong. I don't like that race brain is turning to be like OCR race brain now, where we're just ragging on them for getting it wrong, but they've been doing this for long enough now. You have to start getting it right because it's impacting races. Those two look so good out there. They could have run 10 seconds out of the next run if they absolutely had to, going into wall balls, or they would have had a chance to win it on course.
Yeah.
Do we know that they didn't know about these penalties though at some point during the race?
Well, they said, okay, now
I know I saw officials talking to the teams during the race. I assume they were communicating something.
So it was communicated in the venue that they knew that they had been assessed the penalty for the row. And to BK's point, they took off out of the row to like make that time up. What was said, now granted, this is all speculation when it comes to the post-race complaint for the relay, and it comes to the post-race challenge for the doubles. This is all speculation because this is all hearsay on who filed what, and so none of that really matters. But what they said in the venue, the Faisal came on the mic and said a challenge has been issued for Sinead and Lucy, that the sandbag was dropped. That is what was said over the speaker. And they announced them as world champions when they crossed. Now, the whole time, because I was there, Faisal was talking with Matlock and Mo, because Matlock and Mo were both on course with headsets on, helping out with the judging. And whenever the penalties were happening, they were telling Faisal, and then Faisal was saying it over the speaker. So because of the fact that it was never mentioned until after the race, because from my perspective from the stands, I didn't actually see the sandbag touch the ground. It looked like it fell, but it looked like Sinead caught it before it touched from my angle. And they didn't say anything about it. So I don't believe that they knew that the sandbag penalty had been applied. But I will say this too. In the other thing too is Sinead and Lucy did not run a perfect race. Bracken, how many no reps did Sinead get on the wall balls?
I don't know what it was up to.
It was substantial.
I was looking for, and I think they lost over 20 seconds to Lauren Griffith team. So yes, they still even had a chance there.
It was substantial. And if they had run, I mean, I think, again, to be fair to the athletes, like Sinead Bent arrived this weekend. I think it's fair to say between the 4th place finish and the 2nd place in the doubles and what she did in the relay, She's a crowd favorite. The place erupted again on doubles when she picked up the farmers carries. You know, just like we gave Hide a hard time for wall balls, Sinead's got to clean up her wall balls. She gives way too much time back in the singles and the doubles on that. So they could have won the race even with the penalties. That's how good of a race that they ran. So it wasn't clean by any stretch of the imagination.
All right. My last complaint. It's kind of doubling down on what we talked about. Everything's going to be positive from here on out from me because this was a fantastic weekend and I don't want it to overshadow that. But both the burpee broad jumps and the wall balls, the things that they have implemented to clean up the sport have made the sport worse. The wall ball target, watching these wall ball reps not get counted when they are hitting within a quarter of an inch of dead center in that target, it's kind of a travesty. Like, these people are completing good reps and they're getting no rep because the sensor is not saying it was a rep. And the judges don't have this override system to be like, that was clean. And so you end up just losing rep after rep after rep on good reps. And the burpee broad jump rules have now limited how hard you can work. The purpose of the rule should be allow people to play as hard as they can without gaining an advantage. But now what it's doing is it's forcing people to work slower, to be more precise. And that's not what Hyrox is trying to test. It's not a technical sport. We're not testing precision. We're testing work. That's all Hyrox has ever been about. And we're now limiting the work people can put out and the speed they can work at because the rules don't facilitate work. And I think they need to revisit it. If it's not making it clearer and if it's not allowing athletes to work hard, why do we have the rules in place?
And you can actually see that specifically in this race. Sinead and Lucy put 34 seconds on the Lauren's team in the burpee broad jumps. And if you go back and watch, it looks because they either got a yellow card or they were getting warnings and they were unclear of what they were getting them for, because every judge has a different way of sort of enforcing it or putting their hand here or foot there. You could actually see Lauren Griffith raise her hand, which means you're trying to get a new judge. You get the race director's attention, then they give you a new judge if you don't like what your judge is saying or how they're communicating to you. But I don't think they even saw it. Eventually, they did get their judge switched.
And they started doing step up and pause.
Yes,
and once you're doing that, your momentum is done and you're giving up a half a second per rep. It's just, again, like, this is supposed to be a spectacle of speed and work. And we have rules in place that are nerfing that. So again, we look at the rule and say it makes them slower and it causes more confusion. Thus, it's a bad rule. Let's put a different rule in place that allows them to work hard with no confusion. No one should have to watch and be like, why was that a bad rep?
Yeah.
And the videos are brutal on wall balls. You're just hitting the dead center and it's not going off. They still have problems with that.
Yeah. All that to say, though, it was a great race. I mean, hats off to, even though they took second place, hats off to Lucy and Sinead. That was Sinead's third race of the season, and she had to have just been haggard and hurting and sore, and it never looked like it. The way that she was running, the way that Lucy was running, they took over after the push, just like we saw them do previously in the London race. And then they basically, they never looked back. They came out of the sled push 5 seconds ahead. They came out of the sled pull 11 seconds ahead. They came out of the burpees almost 40 seconds ahead. And then, obviously the row, they gave back 10 seconds. So they were 31 seconds ahead. And then, they were, without the sandbag lunges, they would have been 30 seconds ahead in the wall balls as well. So they were definitely, they did not run the most clean race, but they definitely were the most visually impressive team. And, shout out to Lauren Weeks and Lauren Griffith. I've made my opinions on Lauren Weeks very clear on this show. I think that she's the greatest of all time in Hyrox. And once again, Lauren just refuses to quit. She will herself. I mean, she will. They were 30 seconds back, and I don't think she wound up going unbroken because I think she eventually, like, her cadence on the wall balls was very quick, and then they caught and overtook Sinead, and then they switched. But I don't want Lauren Weeks. But I need to have, and I never will because I'm not this fast. But if I was ever racing Lauren Weeks, I need probably a 6-minute, 7-minute, 10-minute head start to just feel comfortable, because she is going to work herself to the point of blowing up before she concedes a race. And it's impressive to watch.
And she's a good teammate.
Great teammate.
They didn't have the cleanest transition always, but they worked as a team. What this weekend highlighted to me is that the teams who matched up their skill sets did the best because they got the most out of their fitness.
Yeah.
But what we saw in teams where someone had bigger fitness or just ability than the other one is we saw a lot of people dropping their teammates and just running 20 meters ahead, looking over their shoulder, calling, and then waiting and chilling and hitting the brakes, getting into the zones and waiting up for them. And I can't imagine anyone responds super well to getting dropped. And Lauren used her extra energy to thrash herself on any station she could use it on. I didn't really see her overworking her partner on the runs. So she, not only is she the best we've ever seen, but she races with intelligence as well, which doesn't always go hand in hand.
Yeah, she was also in Lauren Griffith's ear the whole time, like being encouraging.
Yeah. There wasn't negative body language. We saw that out there. We saw some negative body language. We saw some people infighting. None of that there.
Yeah. And then shout out to Linda Meyer and Viola. What a weekend for Linda, winning her first championship. And again, like, it kind of was the same thing in this race as the Paris race. Like, if there is any question on Linda's fitness and her ability to be a threat next year, there shouldn't be, because again, Viola Oberlander is in the top 10, maybe top 5 women of all time in this sport. And Linda was, I don't think it was intentional, because Linda was just smiling the whole time and just like happy to be there, but she was dropping Viola just like we saw in France.
Casually.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at one point, Meg Jacoby actually called it out on the live stream, because I think it was coming into the push. Like, Linda just like never looked back to see where Viola was. And it was like, they had obviously planned for Viola to do the push first. And like Linda came in and like got there and then like turned around, and Viola was like, she was coming in, but she hadn't even gotten to the sled on the other side yet. Like, she had to wait like almost 10 seconds for Viola to get caught up to take over. So
which is a penalty, according to the rule book.
Yeah.
They were very unclear on if that is a penalty or not.
Rule book says it is.
We could not get a straight answer on it.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't know. Maybe they just decided that if you decide to do that, the way that we're going to hold you up is we're just not going to let you start the station until they get there. Yeah. So it's kind of like a 10-second penalty in effect, but who knows?
To your point, Linda and Tim doubled down on how good they are right now in this doubles race. Can we talk about Tim deciding to just get his team back on track after like a mini temper tantrum?
Yes, we can. Do we have any other thoughts on the women first before we hop over to the men?
The top 3 teams, top 3 fastest run splits by far. And I think it actually contrasts a little bit with the men. There was a little more variance with that, but yeah, they pulled away on the runs for sure. I was actually surprised that the Laurens had the fastest run split too.
Yeah, and it did not go down the way that we thought. We did not have all the teams in on the wall balls at the same time. But there was some strong performances. I think next year, I think Lucy and Sinead, probably the early front runners. And then the Van den Lindenloos, that's impressive. This was their first, Elite 15 race. They obviously raced their way in via the France race, but they showed up and showed very well. They're still young. They will be right in it next year.
I'm glad you brought them up. To me, their most outstanding performance of the weekend goes to them. They are punching above their Hyrox weight in both of their races. The relay and the doubles, they should not be on paper able to compete at a top 5 level. And they're just dogs, and they're good at it, and they have good chemistry out there, and they're just effective. And I was blown away by how they handled the bright lights and the big stage and the big dogs around them.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. The other headline, I guess, that we didn't touch on, but we still don't know why Tia, Toomey, and Joanna were the favorites heading into this race, and they did elect to not race, or Tia elected not to race, which meant by default Joanna did not race. We do not know why. She did race earlier in the day with James. So it'd be interested to hear why, but that definitely had, I think that definitely changed the dynamic of the race a little bit, because they were the heavy favorites going in. All right, on to the dudes. Men's race, your top 5 teams: the Germans, Tim Viish and Yannick Chopla, taking the first ever elite doubles world title, followed by the Spaniards, Roberto Viciedo Jimeno and Luis Garcia Rubio. Had a cool moment with them post race. I don't know which one came up to me and basically said, "My English is no good, but you picked us." And I said, "Yeah, I picked you." And then he said, "English no good." Gave me a thumbs up. And I was like, "Yeah, man, I picked you. That's right. That's right, baby." And then in the third spot, Rylan Shadeg, Ryan Kent with a 50-56. In fourth, Bo Wills and Eugenio Bianchi, 51-02. And in fifth place, Peter Mays, Tom Fransons, the Belgians, 51-19. Oh, go ahead.
I think you should read down to 8th place today.
All right.
No, just kidding. Just kidding.
This race, we'll start with this was a great race, and I want to spend most of the time talking about the race. Also want to get Marcus's perspective, but there were a couple of things. One big thing that happened that, definitely probably altered the outcome slightly, which is that the betting favorites by a long shot, Rich Ryan and Palayo Menendez, were forced to pull out after the ski. It came out later that Palayo has been dealing with some Achilles tendinopathy for a little over a month now, and honestly wasn't sure if he was going to race the singles or the doubles, but ultimately decided that he was going to go for it. He pulled up on the course, and then that was the end of their race. Again, this is why you have to run the race. This is why you can't just write people's names on the check, Jack. Because it's in racing and in sport, anything can happen. But that definitely did have an impact on this race, because they were, like I said, they were the favorites. I don't know. It could have been Tim and Yannick's day no matter what. And this is not to take anything away from them, but our thoughts and prayers are out with Palayo. I hope that we hope collectively that it's nothing too serious and that he's able to get back to training, because we'd love to be able to see what that team can do on the big stage.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking to see that. They were already dealing with issues on their ski erg, it looked like. And then it's just, it cemented, though, how chaotic hybrid sports are. The main races, not one favorite one. Single men, single women, double men, double women. The top
Relay.
Yeah, relay. I don't think anyone if you take out the relay, I don't think anyone that would have been pre-race top 3. 1.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Because on the men's side, the podium favorites would have been Rich and Palayo. Well, they were Rich and Palayo, JK and Jake, who also did not line up because Jake had to pull out of the singles race. I think he said on Instagram it was nerve pain, and they chose not to race. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that James Kelly and Jake Dearden, and then Rich and Palayo not being in this race, definitely there was a butterfly effect there.
Big time.
That's another thing too, just going back to officiating really quick. So Rich actually broke the ski erg. And then it just so happened that the way that the men all filled in, there happened to be an open ski erg next to Rich, which doesn't make any sense, but there was. So they told him just to move over. I asked Rich if they were going to give them time, and he said all I was told was they would figure it out. That is not an acceptable response in that moment. I think that people need to know. I think the other athletes need to know if you're going to give Rich and Palayo 10 seconds because you need to move them to a different ski erg or whatever it is, that needs to be known in the race for the other competitors. But again, I don't want to spend too much time there. This race was super exciting, and I cannot wait to hear Marcus's perspective on it. First and foremost, it almost started the way that it started exactly the way we thought it was going to. 15 teams, 30 dudes, all massive individuals, took off at a pace that, Debo, from what it looked like, I'd be curious to your perspective, was not sustainable and everybody went. Nobody held back. No one held off the back.
There was a Raw Debo on the back.
You were on the back, but you were attached.
And Rich Lyle to the group. Were bottom third until the final 200 meters.
But talk to us about that pace, Debo. How did it feel? It looked like it felt like shit.
It felt pretty good for us in the back. Dawson always keeps his pace. I think we were shooting for 5:15, 5:20 pace coming out, and I guarantee we were probably right on that. So I'm not sure how it felt up front, but it was very hectic going into that first ski.
Rich said that he felt like that he was running 5:08 to 5:10 pace on the back. So the front was probably running what, BK? 5?
Yeah, under. For a while, 4:45 to start, settling into 4:50, 4:55.
And they told us that the first run was essentially 1,200 meters. Plus, you entered the rock zone and you basically ran that entire stretch. So probably was a good 13:50. So a nice long first run.
Yeah, it was long. It was cool to see though. I stood up on the back of the bleachers and watched you all come, and dudes that big should not be able to run that fast. It was pretty impressive. You guys came in. Do we have any idea how long your run 1 was? Because you guys ran a different course in the age group.
That's what I just said.
How? No, I know how long, but you know the amount of the distance it was.
I said it was. They told us it was around 1,200 meters for the run.
Around 12, okay.
And then when we came in the grid, you had that entire stretch because the ski ergs were on the far side of the rock zone.
So it's probably like 1,400.
1,350 is what I just said a minute ago.
Okay, I apologize. I was looking at. All right, I'm gonna get roasted for that. That's okay. Okay, so 1,350, and you guys came in at Thierry and Heidi came in first at 4:07, followed by Tim and Yannick at 4:08. Everybody else was basically 4:20 or faster. So absolutely cooking. And then flying out of there, it was fun to watch you all kind of like, there was a lot of chatter. People were like coming off and then they were like barking at people next to them. Jake Williamson said that Rich told him that 128 wasn't fast enough. He was going to have to pull faster. But Debo, you had an interesting experience on the ski. You want to talk about it?
Well, as you were talking about with the ski erg being left out there, you're coming in, it's not in the individuals. I've seen this happen before, but obviously it's more hectic now. There's 30 guys coming in. I think they had 16 skis out there. But yeah, so I grabbed the handles. The teams behind me are just all running through me. There's someone on my platform, but I have the handles in the hand of my ski erg. So I'm not letting go of the handles. I start trying to pull, but there's someone right there and they're yelling at me to get, I wasn't going to let go of the handles. So we kept our ski erg and they had to go find a different one.
Could you imagine trying to fight Marcus Wallace over a ski erg and rec specs? You're just not winning.
You don't get a rebound over a man in rec specs, and that is canon.
Absolutely not. Yeah, and then you guys just pulled. It was ridiculous. I would have loved to have been able to see. Go ahead.
The sensible teams probably pull about 136, 138. There are a few crazy men out there who go. They generally are the teams that switch more though, that go like 125, 150, and they seem to be pulling like low 130s, 132.
So fast.
Yeah, it was so fast. Tim and Yannick came out first with a 325, which means they were probably pulling, because you guys had the way you guys had to run out. They're probably pulling in those 130s. We talked that we're fairly confident that the biggest team in the field was Raw Debo, both by a factor of height and a factor of weight. We talked about this after the race. Marcus and Dawson both weighed in at over 200 pounds on Saturday. So we had 400 pounds of All-American USDA beef that if the sleds were heavy, we knew that it would benefit Raw Debo. And It did. Marcus, you there's a lot of talk about the sleds this weekend. Did not seem to be a problem for you. You pulled a Rich and just absolutely walked that thing like a dog through Central Park. How'd the sleds feel?
I'm pretty sure the new sleds are the easiest sleds I've ever felt. So I wish they were a little bit heavier, just so the runners can't have these easy sleds. But they were, good gliding.
Yeah, Marcus and Dawson came into the sled 8th and left the push in 2nd, and then came into the pull in 3rd, and then left in 2nd again. Did not necessarily seem to be too big of a factor for the elite men. Also didn't really seem to be a factor for the elite women. But sled pull is also where Rylan and Ryan made a move as well. They came out of the sled pull actually in 1st, followed by Marcus Wallace and Dawson. Tim and Yannick came out 3rd, 12 seconds back. Thierry and Heidi came out 19th. And then Alan and Jake came out, they came out 4th, 19 seconds behind. And then Alan and Jake came out in 5th, 21 seconds behind. And honestly, that's kind of where I thought that Tim and Yannick might, because the pace that Tim and Yannick were running seemed unsustainable all the way through the sleds. And I remember watching and thinking to myself, oh, this actually might be the end of like where they run out of luck, like the adrenaline is starting to run off or wear off. But coming into the burpees where Bracken mentioned we had a little bit of controversy, Tim and Yannick actually made up all of the ground they lost to Rylan and Ryan and came into burpees in 1st place, followed by Rylan, Marquez, Thierry, and then that's when the Sutherlands made a move into the top 5. Debo, talk to us about kind of that mid stretch and your thoughts going into the burpees there.
Well, from my team's perspective, one of us was feeling good after the sled pull. One was not feeling as good. So we started to slow down a little bit. But we did get to the burpees and we came out still in a good position. I think it has us listed as 3rd coming up, but I think we were 4th coming out of the burpees. So still hanging on. But there was a lot more movement on the stations in this race than I thought there might be. It's so hard to make up time on them, but especially like burpees, lunges, as we got to those, there was a lot of movement there. And as we were talking about before, I actually looked at the burpees before. I was surprised. I think we had the 5th fastest burpee. I think a lot of teams were getting also slowed down by judging or not being quite aware because we are not the fastest burpeers in the field.
Yeah, we saw
BK, you're going to say something.
We saw form change on a lot of teams. There are 2 types. There's the people who get a yellow card and they keep doing it. And then there are people who get a yellow card and they go into conservative mode. And that's also the time in the race when the fatigue really settles in. You start to reap what you sowed on the sleds and the ski erg. And at that point, going slow on burpees becomes cumbersome. They end up taking that extra like 1/4 of a second gather when you've come to a stop that wasn't there early. And so that it really compounds. And we saw some people, again, it sucks, but affected by judging.
Yeah, and it was interesting that you brought up the point about Tim stepping or, basically looking like he wasn't following the standard when he started. But Yannick got a red card like right away. And I almost wondered if they noted that like Tim was skirting the rules and then they hit Yannick with it. But Yannick actually got 2 red cards, which was a 20-second penalty.
30.
So despite the fact that Tim and Yannick left first, Rylan and Ryan came out 2nd, and they were working with 20 seconds there.
It was actually 30 they announced on the live stream. The first one's right, 10, the 15, second one's 20.
Yeah. So they had 30 seconds that they were playing with there. So at that point in the race, kind of the way that it was shaping up coming out of burpees was the Spaniards made a huge move and left in 2nd place. Rylan and Ryan had a 30-second lead on the Germans because of the penalty. But then at that point, Marcus and Dawson were in 3rd. And then Bo and Eugenio were, Bo and Eugenio were actually in 4th at that point. And Tim and Yannick had fallen all the way back to 5th because of the penalty. That basically stayed that way into the row. Coming out of the row, it was effectively a little bit more of the same. Marcus and Dawson dropped back to 5th. The Sutherlands made a move, came out of row in third, and you still had the Spaniards there. But then Tim, I mean, really actually stayed that way. I think, yeah, it basically stayed that way until Farmers Carries, where there was a little bit of an issue that impacted the race a little bit, which was the order was the same. Ryan and Rylan came out, and this is where Rylan is such a great human, and so his post-race comment on this was, he took ownership for it, which I think is, respect to Rylan. He did the right thing. I think they were a little heavy-handed on him. He did not throw the kettlebells. He set them down, but one tipped over, and the judge screamed at him to come back. Kent had no idea what was going on and was running through the rock zone, I think, until someone said something to him. Then he realized it, turned around, and came back. And I actually wonder if they should have just taken a 10-second penalty.
It ended the race.
Yeah, it ended the race because by the time they realized what was happening, they had gotten past and they lost time. And I just think, again, that's an area where I understand that we need to set the kettlebells down. And Dave Claxton talks about this all the time. Like, we can't be throwing equipment, but he didn't throw it. He set it and it dropped, and that's not his fault. Like, he didn't like toss it, and it cost him time. And I think that, yeah, I get it. Rules are rules, but that seems like an area where, judges had altered the outcome where it was unnecessary.
Yeah, it disconnected them from the race.
Yeah.
I think he should have put the kettlebells down and have them standing up like they told us to.
It is hard to tip a heavy kettlebell over.
They explicitly told us to make sure to do that, and everyone else is making sure that they do it and taking the time. So yes, you can't just whip them over.
I hear you, but he didn't. But he didn't whip them over there. That was the thing. It wasn't like he went like this. He dropped them, and when he dropped it, whatever. It doesn't matter. Again, the rule was correct. I mean, it was applied. My greater point was they would have been better off taking off and taking the 10-second penalty than running all the way back to set them up and then take off again, because it cost them more time than what a penalty would have.
Yep, I get it.
Is the point. So from there, coming out of the Farmers Carries and going in at this point, Tim and Yannick caught a second wind, and to BK's point, Tim just wheeling them into back into the lead. They cut that 30-second lead down to 13 coming into the lunges.
Well, I do think we need to not skirt it. Rylan and Yannick both started kind of cracking on the run at the same time, and Tim rode the entire row. So the row at
50 meters. Yeah.
He didn't do the full 1,000?
No, he did 7 because I was sitting next to Michelle.
Oh, he did 7.
And it was Tim rowing next to Kent. And I remember because she asked me, she said, how fast are they pulling? Kent was pulling 131s, and then Tim was pulling 130s. And Tim rode 750 meters to give Yannick a break, and basically held mid to low 130s the whole time. And then Kent and Rylan, I think, switched twice, and then that cost them time.
And that was the story of it. He gave Yannick that entire time to recover, and then Yannick was back in the game after that.
Yeah, Tim was
that's heroic stuff. 750 at that point in the race at that pace, no one wants to do that.
Yeah, Tim wasn't going to be denied. Coming into the sandbag lunges, we had, it was in this order, it was Rylan, Ryan, Tim and Yannick, the Spaniards, the Sutherlands, and then Bo and Eugenio with Marcus and Dawson on their hip. The lunge performance by Tim and Yannick was also very impressive. They were 13 seconds back, and Kent and Rylan are both good lungers. And the Germans took another 7 seconds off and closed the gap to being 6 seconds at this point. The Spaniards crushed it as well. They came out 15 seconds back, and then wall balls in on that last run after the lunges. So just as a reminder, Tim and Yannick were about 7 seconds back of Ryan and Rylan.
Only in theory.
Only in theory. And then they put more time into that run 8 and came in first place, actually 2 seconds ahead of Ryan and Rylan. And then the Spaniards came in 15 seconds behind. The Southerns came in 20 seconds behind. Bo and Eugenio came in 30 seconds. And the story actually on the wall balls was the Spaniards. I don't know which one started, but his cadence was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It was like Matt Frazier talking about, you want to get better at Karen. It's not about going unbroken. It's about pace and cadence. And he was exploding through every single squat. I think we actually talked about in this show that we saw their wall ball times and we were like, how is a 307 possible for dudes? And now I know how it's possible. They've got the fastest cadence I've ever seen, to the point where Kent actually started the wall balls, and I think he had like a 15 or wall ball gap on the Spaniards, and they erased it. Not even because Kent broke, but because that's how fast they were doing them.
If you go back and watch, actually, so they did 2 switches. They had a guy start and finish, and then a guy in the middle. Roberto is the guy who started. He has very good squat levers, actually. He's a little shorter, but he was actually getting some no reps. I think more than one for sure. So they could have even been a little faster. But then he passed off to Luis, who was wearing like the brighter colored shorts. Yeah. And the first guy probably only did like 20, but once Luis was on, he was just ripping them. Those were very, very fast wall balls. He took it to close to the end and then subbed out. So they did still have 2 switches, even with that super fast time.
That's kind of crazy. 2 switches, 307 might cause people to rethink their wall ball strategy. But at the same time that was going on, Kent and Ryland were just leaking reps. Specifically, Ryland. Kent had some no reps. Ryland had like 7.
Yeah. And they talked about it after the race. Like, I don't think that either one was dogging. And I know that neither one was dogging the other. Ryland was pretty honest of like, look, I just didn't have it. And Kent carried me, and it looked like it on the wall balls. I mean, you're right, Bracken. At that point, they were just going backwards.
It's honestly spectacular what Ryland was able to accomplish on tired legs with the fitness he showed in New York. He didn't have the ability to finish off that race. His back was gone on him by the end of it. So the fact that he even did this much work after looking like he was starting to crack on the runs coming into burpee broad jump was like, he really willed himself through that race. And Kent obviously was a superhero out there.
Yeah. And if you're wondering why we spent so much more time on this race than we did on the women's, I think it's just because the placement of the women, basically, that's just kind of what it was. They kind of fell into formation, and that's how it went. There was a few moves, but this race was way back and forth, because at one point I remember thinking to myself, hey, Bo Wills and Eugenio, I thought that they were going to do, a lot better than, what they did. And at one point they looked like they were pretty disconnected from the pack, but then they came in and had a great wall ball and finished with the 51.02, which was good enough for 4th. And then the Belgians also, BK, you talked about this, like kind of punching above their weight, really had a strong finish, and actually finished in 4th. I'm looking at it. Farmers carries, or 5th, sorry. Farmers carries, they were 9th out. And then they finished with a top five time.
They were the team that impressed me the most of the weekend, the Belgians coming in. I did not think they had that in them, but yes, they came out significantly a decent chunk behind after some of the sleds, and they just kept chipping away the whole race. Great teamwork. You can tell they've raced together a lot, had a good strategy coming in.
Yeah. Other takeaways for either of you? Devo, anything that happened, any like on course stuff you want to tell us about? Give us the inside track.
I do have to apologize to Bo Wills. I can be a little sarcastic sometimes, but it's the middle of a race might not be the best time. We were running one time and he asked me if it was the lap we were going in. And I said yes. But then in my head, I thought, why should I tell him? So then I said no. But then he believed me when I said no. So then I had to yell, actually, yes, go in. So my apologies to Bo for trying to mislead you in the race.
That's just Devo doing Devo stuff right there.
I apologize, though.
Devo would never apologize, though. In reality, you're about to lose that title.
That's mental warfare right there.
It was interesting to me The women had, I would say, just a generalization visually, the women had worse transitions partner to partner across the board. The men had worse strategy partner to partner across the board. And I think that we see this in relays a lot. You see a lot of bad, not strategy, but execution in like Olympic sprint relays on the men's side. And it's interesting that the men as well just didn't, some of the teams were dialed, but the women like fumbled a lot of sled handoffs, and the men just had bad strategy for like 30% of the field. I don't know how much of that you saw out there, Devo.
I know. I feel like maybe the men, there were just people were finding themselves in positions they weren't planning to be in.
Yeah.
I know for us, we changed up our strategy a decent amount on the back end on the fly. We had a pretty set plan going in and had to adjust it. So I think that's where you might be seeing that is, they're came out a little hot, or they're all of a sudden eighth. They plan to be top 3. So yeah, you got to switch it up.
Yeah.
Dawson was pretty honest that he had never felt that way in a Hyrox before. The way he felt coming off the sled, he just didn't. I mean, Dawson's ability is his running ability, and he was not able to access it. I actually remember Michelle Dawson. I love you. I know you're going to comment on the YouTube when you see this, but Michelle was like, and this is no disrespect to Devo, it was like run 4 or 5. Michelle was like, "Hey, if Dawson is like 5 to 10 meters back of Marcus, is that a bad sign?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a bad sign. That's not good. That's not. I don't think that's how they planned it."
You don't want it to happen on this stage, but it is a necessary piece for your evolution as a Hyrox athlete, is to crack and feel it and feel how bad it can get and feel what led to that. So he's only going to be better for it, but it's unfortunate this is the stage it happens on.
I love my teammate.
I love your teammate too. Great guy. Great guy. He'll be on the YouTubes letting me know about it. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. But it's interesting, Bracken. Like, I think some of these, not all, but I think a lot of the, I think a lot of the women have raced together multiple times and over years, whereas a lot of these teams came together in the last, 5 months, transparently, to to race. So I think next year will be even better. Will we see Raw Debo make another run at Elite 15 doubles?
I have not been thinking past Saturday night for a while, so I'm getting my life back together, and we will come up with a plan.
Drinking some beers.
What I hope that means is that they're both a yes if they're not already in singles.
Yes, that is correct.
My hope is we see you both in singles.
Yeah, no doubt. I hope we see you in both, to be honest. All right, gentlemen, any other thoughts on either of the doubles races? I think that they lived up to the hype. I think it was being in the stadium. I think it was unlike Friday night. Granted, a lot of people were done at that point on Saturday. But the crowd loved it. They were both super exciting races to watch. I think we got what we wanted out of it. Again, to your point, BK, I don't think anybody thought that prior to the weekend. I don't think that anybody thought that Tim and Yannick were going to win, and I don't think anybody thought that Sinead and Lucy were going to win. I mean, literally on this show, we were talking about how Sinead, it might be a bit too soon for Sinead, but that next year she was going to be a problem. And all that she proved this weekend is that when the bright lights come on, she is ready to rumble.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't care that they didn't take first place. They won. They were the best, and it wasn't really that close. She impressed me so much.
Yeah. Hard to disagree. And Tim Viish, are you kidding me? We've been talking about waiting for the ascension of Tim, that he's like the next in line. He's the next in line, and he got hurt and whatever. And, here's all these newcomers. And then to take back-to-back dubs on the weekend. I mean, Tim. This is all I'm saying is that top 10 episode that we're going to do here in a couple weeks of top 10 of all time. Tim's stock is leaving the weekend. He's going to have the biggest jump of anybody in terms of legacy.
All I know is that next year is going to be the healthiest, fullest, craziest, most even sport we've ever seen. We're adding Meg back in. We have Linda now, who is finally someone has joined up front. Well, and Joanna too. We have 4 people now who all have to have decent betting odds to win anything. Plus Sinead.
You can't count out Sinead. Yeah, so you can't count out Sinead.
And then on the men's side, Ronk gets the comeback story. JK gets to go back to being like, am I overlooked again? Which I think he thrives in that. You have Hunter, who's always now you can rely that he's at least has that potential still that he once showed. And you have Tim on top of all the young guns coming up. The sport is going to be insane next year.
Yeah, I didn't like how they asked Hunter if he was going to race again, and he was kind of cagey about it. I don't like this whole thing at the end of every season of, I don't know if I'm going to come back. It's getting kind of played out.
Yeah,
hopefully he races.
Just don't engage with it.
Yeah. And he's being honest about it. He's been on the edge of, can I keep putting myself through this for several years? He just is poisoned and eaten up by losing. I think had he won last year or this year, he would have walked away either time, but he's back because he can't live with this. So I don't think he's playing a game. I think Hyrox needs to stop engaging.
Yeah. Yeah. Debo, final thoughts on the doubles or relay races?
Overall doubles, like I said, on the women's side, it was like the three best running teams won it. Men is a little interesting because especially if someone like me, not the fastest runner in the field, I keep thinking like, oh, there will be all these fast runners who come and just crush it. But you look at the teams and it's a mix of really good runners. I mean, the Spaniards just hammered some of those stations, took over. Bo Will's known for the stations not being the fastest runner, and he's way up there. Then you got like the Sutherland brothers, the Belgians, just awesome teamwork. So it's interesting how it played out. Lots of different approaches, and yeah, different things proved successful in the race.
It also proved that the so-called strength and station guys have all upped their run game so significantly that in a really painful, brutal race like doubles, there aren't these massive gaps between the runners and the non-runners because the whole sport has just embraced the fact that you have to run well.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Awesome weekend overall. Awesome racing. Again, we said this, I think on one of the preview shows, and we also said it in a story. Like, the beautiful thing about Hyrox is it's a legit sport when you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's no one would have predicted that this weekend was going to go the way that it did. And that was, that's why we run the races. That's why we compete. It was awesome to see. Awesome steps forward. Overall, I agree, BK. I think I'm so excited for next year. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. So, gentlemen, as always, appreciate you all. If you made it this far, go ahead and like and subscribe on the YouTube. Like and subscribe to the Spotify. Go to racebrain.media. Like and subscribe to Marcus Wallace's newsletter. It's got good content. It's not even good. It's great content. We're putting out so much content you can't even keep up with it. And then if you missed the opportunity to get a sticker, sorry, find us at future races. We'd love to hand them out. You won't be able to win the $200 to the feed because that's going to be over, but we got plenty of stickers that we will make sure that we have with us at future races. Let us know what we got right. Let us know what we got wrong. See y'all in the comments. Peace.